Let's make sure everything is working here. Obviously my music is working. I'm not sure why the video isn't playing. The rest of the video isn't playing. Yep, okay. Audio is working. That's all I cared about. Let's see. Why is that not showing? See. Theater mode. There we go. Okay. I was like, why is it not showing the chat where I'm used to seeing it? Alright. Get this show on the road. La hora is 3:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's good enough. Okay. Let me call up my showrunner here. I believe this is the one I want. And yupper. Okay. Let me head copying. We're on the road here. Alright. So, I am the Irish Mouthpiece. That's the name of this channel. That's the name of me on this channel, otherwise known as Siobhan. I'm not a liberal. I'm a leftist. Probably closer to socialism than anything else. I don't concern myself too much with theory if it gets in the way of people. I want to treat people as people, give them human dignity, consideration, etc., as well as a place to stay, a roof over their head, food on their table, etc. And I believe in a UBI. I think everybody should have that. I'm definitely not a fan of capitalism in any way, shape, or form. I tend to vote Democrat only because that's really the only left option there is in America that's viable in any way. Sometimes that's not great either. So, before we get into that though, I want to show something. Batman. This is, let me move my showrunner out of the way so I can see where this is. Where is it? There we go. There. For some reason, I don't know why, really bright. So you can see it's Nine Lives cat food. That'll come into play later in the show. So, the title of the show is Riots and Fascists and Trump, oh my, when is enough is enough. So we're going to be covering 3 topics today. We're going to be covering ICE. We're going to be covering, let's see, where are we here? Hold on a second. What in the world? So we're going to be covering ICE. We're going to be covering the assassinations in Minnesota and the assassination attempt. And then we're going to be covering the parade from Grandpa Spanky Pants and his reaction to the parade, as well as that of other people. Okay. So, like I say here, I will be covering ICE and why they're fucking cowards, and they are cowards, period. Okay, as well as fascist slugs. They're also cowards. The right-wing assassinating Democrats or leftist politicians, and why the GOP really doesn't give a fuck. Okay, and the GOP and why it's good to have a 79-year-old doddering, petulant, greedy, self-absorbed man baby as our supposed leader, and also why, at least as long as the GOP is in power, that's not going to change. Okay, so we're going to cover a few articles here. I'm not going to read extensively on them. You can go and do that. There'll be a pin post after the show that has the links there. If you want to see those, you can go ahead and read those. You can also comment in the comment section below if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, you think I've gotten something wrong or I've gotten something right, whatever you want to say, go ahead and hit it in the comments. Generally, ICE, the reason I call ICE cowards is because where do they focus on? They focus on places of work. They focus on daycares, on grocery stores, on employment centers, on courtrooms, the places where people, except maybe for the courtroom, but other than that, the places where people, they're just there to work. They're there to work and provide for their families. And ICE goes in and rounds people up. Not always, sometimes American citizens, okay, which is why Garcia is back and is I believe he's been charged. I believe he's also pled not guilty. And it's going to be hilarious in some respects to try to see the administration and Blondie Bondi try to fabricate charges against him, because that's all they have. They have fabricated charges. They don't have any evidence whatsoever that he's some sort of gang member, that he's some sort of criminal mastermind. None. Period. You also have like the little girl, I believe it was, who was a cancer patient and got taken and then deported, kidnapped. It wasn't deported, it was kidnapped and sent to another country without any regard for her cancer care. Because fuck kids, we don't care about kids, right? We're the party of family values, except unless they're, if they're not white, then we don't care about it as much, if at all. So June 4th, Stephen Miller, the Nazi in the White House, got ticked off because there weren't enough arrests, there weren't enough deportations, etc. He threatened to fire senior ICE officials if they did not begin detaining 3,000 a day instead of the 1,000 on average that they had been doing. So you got to step up, you got to bump up those quotas. Okay, 3,000 a day. Whether or not they're there, 3,000 a day. Whether or not they're U.S. citizens, 3,000 a day. He also threatened to fire leaders of the local offices if they were the bottom 10% or lower numbers of arrests monthly. But they don't have quotas, right? And shortly after that, ICE launched the largest immigration crackdown. Okay, started busting people left and right. Okay. June 10th, migrant workers were picked up at an Italian restaurant in San Diego. A high school volleyball player was detained and held for deportation because that's that evil criminal, that volleyball player. Courthouse arrests of people who entered the U.S. legally. Okay, and so first of all, they're not hiding. Okay. They're they're going in the courthouse maybe to fill out immigration stuff, whatever, I don't know. Okay. They're here legally. This points out the lie to the bullshit claim by not only the Nazis in charge, but their bootlickers that it's all the criminals. It's all the criminals, and if they just went through the legal process, people have, and you still fucking deported them anyway. So I don't want to hear any more horse shit about, from the right about, it's a legal process. Okay. Tensions boiled over in LA over the weekend when protesters took to the streets after ICE arrested migrants at Home Depot stores, a garment factory, and a warehouse. Julia Gillette, Associate Director of the U.S. Immigration Policy Program at the Nonpartisan Migration Policy Institute, said, "It seems like they're just arresting people that they think might be in the country without status and able to be deported. No reason to arrest them just because they're there, just because they might be able to be deported through some sort of twist in the laws." Okay. However, workplace raids will be stopped after Trump conceded that deportations are hurting agricultural and hospitality industries, hotels, restaurants, whatever. The Trump administration campaign is reportedly shifting its focus away from raids on the agriculture and hospitality sectors. This was June 14th. After Donald Trump conceded this week that his immigration policies were hurting the farming and hotel industries. No shit. New York Times reported that an internal email was sent on Thursday by Tatum King, a senior ICE official, to different department leaders directing them to stop workplace immigration ICE actions unless related to criminal investigations. So, if they're investigating John Doe because they think he actually committed a crime, okay, which I don't agree with either, but okay. But other than that, you can't just go, oh, look, they look Latino, where's your papers? You don't have your papers? Boom, you're in El Salvador. But did they do this? It says the email explained that investigations about human trafficking, money laundering, drug smuggling are okay, but they were not to make arrests of non-criminal collaterals. Effective today, please hold on all worksite all worksite enforcement investigations or operations on agriculture, including aquaculture and meatpacking plants, restaurants, and operating hotels. Okay, so you're working at a golf course, you're working in a hotel, you're working in the kitchen of a restaurant. You're working for a landscaping company. Okay. Some jobs that Americans, a lot of white Americans don't want to do. Okay. Especially, like say, for with farms, whatever, because it's hard work. It's definitely fucking hard work, and they don't get paid full wages. You gonna go out there and pick lettuce for $7.25 an hour, even if it's a minimum wage, it's federal minimum wage. Okay, you gonna go out there and pick lettuce for $7.25 an hour? Assuming you can find somebody who pay that much. No, you're not. Okay, but the reason that they changed that wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts. It wasn't because they're like, oh well, we've had this religious or this spiritual epiphany, kind of like Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, where we've been evil and so we're going to start. No, had nothing to do with that. It only had to do with money, and it had to do with an oncoming crisis. What's the crisis? It's a food crisis. Okay, and it's coming. A fuck around and find out? No. A reckoning? No. It's a fucking. Okay, you're going to get a fucking, and you, especially you MAGA, are gonna get a fucking. You're not going to be immune to it. When your prices begin skyrocketing, you have only yourselves to blame. MAGA. Only yourselves to blame. Period. It doesn't have a goddamn thing to do with trans people, Pride Month, the leftists, the Democrats. It's all on you, boo-boo. The fuck around, find out videos and stuff on the internet, on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky, on TikTok especially, on YouTube, all that shit, okay? It's coming. It's coming. Okay, and it's going to get stronger and stronger and worse for you. Okay, and I have something I want to say to the MAGA. This show is probably going to be somewhat shorter today. I don't know for sure. Okay, I have something I want to say to MAGA. Okay. Oh, you lost your spouse when ICE came and took them away? Oh, you lost your family farm that's been in your family for generations when ICE came and took all your workers away or scared them off from coming to work for you? Oh, meemaw and peepaw are going to go without food because they got their food stamps cut off? Not one bit of sympathy. Not one iota of giving the slightest fuck. Okay? I hope every single one of you loses everything. Becomes homeless and has to live on the streets. No Medicare, no Medicaid, no EBT, and no housing. You knew this shit was going to happen. You knew it was going to happen. You voted for it. You just didn't think it was going to happen to you. You got exactly what you voted for, and I'm here for it. Schadenfreude. 100% Schadenfreude. Every single bit. A lot of us are going to be suffering along that same range too, okay? And here's why. It is middle of June, okay? So we've already started to get some of the harvest in, okay? Where people have been actually had enough workers to start harvesting, okay? So the harvest season runs from now till about mid-September, maybe-ish, at the most, okay? Where are the people to do the harvesting? Where are the people to harvest the oranges, the potatoes, the onions, the whatever? Where are those people to do that harvesting? Even for stuff that we don't import, okay? Even for stuff we have here, okay? Because we import a lot of food. A lot of food. Where are those people? Where are those harvesters? Where are those harvest workers? A lot of them are immigrants, and a lot of them are scared shitless, and rightfully so. A lot of them are scared shitless that are going to be kidnapped and tossed into another country. How much do you think? What do you think that's going to do your lettuce prices there, Sparky, or your banana prices, or your green bean prices? Somebody said, "Well, we can grow stuff on our own." Yeah, show me how many banana farms there are in America. I'll wait. And yeah, there's some orange farms, especially in Florida, California too. But there's a lot of orange places, okay, places where they grow oranges and whatever. Okay, some of that stuff is going to be here, but because we have less workers to harvest it, regardless of income of what they pay, we have less workers to harvest it. Harvests are going to be smaller. They're going to be slower. What's going to happen when stuff gets scarce? Let's take something that's completely made, not just like grown, but a loaf of bread. Okay. All the things that go into making a loaf of bread. So now let's say your bread supply is X tons a year. Okay, I don't know what, but I know it's a lot for America. It's X amount of tons a year. Okay, so let's say that supply gets cut down in half. So now instead of say 300 tons a year, I don't know what it is, but I'll just pull that number out of my ass. 300 tons a year. Now there's only 150 tons. What's going to happen? Food's going to get scarce. Prices are going to skyrocket. You think they're high now? Psh, shit. Wait until the end of August. Prices are going to skyrocket, and it's all going to be because of Donald Trump, because of his tariffs, and because you bootlickers are not smart enough to realize that you've been scammed. And even if you are smart enough to realize that you've been scammed, you don't want to admit it. You don't want to admit that you've been fooled. I believe it was Mark Twain. He may not have been the first one to say it, but I believe it was Mark Twain who said, "It's easier to fool a man than to convince him that he has been fooled." Your ego doesn't want to let you admit that you screwed up. And like I said, most of you fully knew this was coming. You just didn't think it was going to affect you. Trump's not going to do Trump's going to deport the bad people, the bad Latinos, but he's not going to deport my wife. He's not going to deport my cousin. He is. And like I said, I am enjoying every single ounce of agony and misery that you go through because you wanted this for other people, and now you got it for yourself. Let's go to another thing that the GOP loves to do, only they took it one step further. They love to do character assassination. Okay, so now they've decided to do it for real. Vance Bolter, 57 years old, is a suspect in the killing of a Minnesota lawmaker and the shooting of another. So here's what happened. Basically, he went to one woman's house, okay, let's see, Melissa Hortman, okay. He went to her house, shot and killed her, shot and killed her husband. He went to another house, shot John Hoffman and his wife, okay, and they survived because the cops happened to get there in time, I guess, or whatever, and he came out the door and the cops are there and they fired at each other and he ran back into the house like the fucking coward that he is and ran out the back, I'm assuming, ran out somewhere and escaped temporarily. Okay, they got a manhunt for him. They have caught his wife, by the way, who happened to have, a whole lot of money on her. I wonder why that was. The couple that he shot, the second couple, survived the attack. It has been reported that he had a manifesto. He had a list of a bunch of Democrats and leftists that he wanted to kill, either because they're Democrat and leftist or because they're associated with abortion in some way, shape, or form, whether they're a politician who voted for it or maybe a clinic director or whatever. Okay, because that's your political speech, right? That's your free speech. That's your Second Amendment right, to go out and kill people. Or at least that's what you think, anyway. He dressed like a cop. He was dressed like a cop. Now, this guy was head of his own security, and he had apparently, whatever uniform he had that made him look like a cop. The car looked like a police car. Okay, they found a hit list of nearly 70 names that this guy wanted to go after. Like I said, mostly Democrats or figures with ties to abortion rights. Okay, Hakeem Jeffries said that the assassination of the Minnesota lawmakers was a wake-up call. No shit. Maybe you and the other Democrats who've been kowtowing and sucking up to the Republicans and sucking up to Trump should not do that. Maybe you should push back from that. Maybe you should get off your ass and, like Stephen Colbert says, try doing something. And then finally, this senator got shot and killed. Her husband got shot and killed. A House member got shot, and her husband, or his wife, excuse me, got shot. They survived. Okay. Two things that are most key about that. Okay. One is Trump, which I'll get to in a second, and the other is that it just so happens that with the way the political makeup is with the House and with the Senate in the local House and Senate in Minnesota, okay, this, if they had both been successful, would remove the majority that the Democrats have. It would then either become a tie or one other, that the Republicans would have the majority of. Huh. And the other is Trump. Much as a self-absorbed asshole that he is, I can't say narcissistic because I am not a mental health professional and I don't know, but I know for damn sure that he's self-absorbed, okay? He said, this is a direct quote, well, it's a terrible thing. That's cool. I think he's a terrible governor. I think he's a grossly incompetent person. Why are you saying this when one of his political, one of the people that he worked with, etc., got shot and killed? You're saying he's a terrible person. He's incompetent. And then he said, but I may call him, I may call other people too. Fuck you. He doesn't need your fucking bullshit phone call. Okay. So we're going to get to the protest. So yeah, it's not going to be as long. It's probably going to be actually quite short today. Okay. So the other thing is the protest. Okay. So I mean, you've seen there's all over Blue Sky, there's all over Twitter, there's all over Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and whatever. Okay. So I'm not going to go into all that. You can find all that stuff. Okay. I'm just going to hit a few things up for you. Okay. Democrats, there were the protests that happened yesterday, Saturday, June 14th. Okay, there were 1,400 organized protests. There may have been other ones, but there were 1,400 organized protests from places where they had thousands of people to places where they only had a couple hundred. Demonstrators crowded in the streets, parks, plazas across the U.S. on Saturday to protest Trump. Organizers of the No Kings demonstration said millions had marched in hundreds of events. They had protests in all 50 states. They say somewhere between 3 million and 5 million people, okay, protesting. Governors across the United States had urged calm and vowed no tolerance for violence. While some mobilized the National Guard ahead of marchers gathering, confrontations were isolated. In other words, they weren't that much. The cops have also The cops have also fired on peaceful protesters. They have a clip. It's on Blue Sky, and I'm sure it's on every other social media you can think of, okay, where there's a reporter, and he's talking about how it's a peaceful protest. And less than 20 seconds later, the cops that are pushing along on horses and whatever fire at the protesters. Protesters didn't throw anything at them. Protesters didn't do anything but hold the signs, maybe chant the chants or whatever, and the cops fired on the protesters. And here's another thing about Newsom, who can kiss my big white Irish ass, okay? Newsom's upset. Oh no, and he's rightfully so on this, okay? Trump sent National Guard in and Marines in without consulting him in any way, shape, or form, okay? Which Trump did. I fully concede that. Trump did. So what was Gavin Newsom's response? What was his fix? What was his great idea to fix all of that? To put 400 more cops on the streets. The cops are already rife with bribery and corruption and abuse scandals. We'll just put more of those on the street. It'll be fine that way, right? Right? Okay. No, it won't be. Obviously, I was being facetious. It won't be. The last thing we need on the streets is more fascist thugs. And that's all cops have been. That's all they will ever be. They are there for one thing and one thing only, to protect capitalism. They're not there to protect you. The Supreme Court has literally said that cops have a duty to protect property, not you. If say you're standing on the street corner and a cop is standing on the opposite street corner, he can see you, you can see him, and somebody comes along and pulls a gun out and robs you, okay, or says he's going to rob you, or he's maybe say 20 feet from you, he pulls out a gun and starts walking towards you and waving it. Supreme Court says cop doesn't have to do anything. Just stand there until he sees that guy commit a crime. He doesn't have to do anything, even though he's waving a gun around, whatever. He doesn't have to do anything. Doesn't have to protect you. Has to protect property, but not you. Now, if you're arrested for some reason, whatever it is, okay, and once you're in custody, then they have certain parameters and certain protections that they have to supposedly offer you, although we rarely do, but to supposedly offer you. But until that point, until you're in their custody, they don't have to protect you at all in any way, shape, or form. They're nothing but slave catchers. They're nothing but modern slave catchers, but they're nothing but modern slave catchers. They're nothing but thugs designed to do one thing and one thing only, and that is support capitalism. That's all it is. It's the only reason for the cops. The last part is Grandpa Spanky Pants, is what I like to call President Numpty. Okay, most people who have seen this show at all know that I'm a veteran of the military. I served near the end of the Cold War. I have some respect for the military. I do not have respect for all military members. A lot of them are assholes, right-wing religious assholes, or right-wing bigoted assholes, whatever, or a combination thereof. Okay, but when someone pretends to be the military, tends to annoy me and a lot of other vets. Okay, and people who are also in at the time. All right. So there's a video that shows people marching past Trump, soldiers marching past Trump. Okay, and they got the tanks and they got whatever else. Okay, here's a couple things about that video. I'll do the one at the end. But so they're marching. Okay, no, they're not. They're just walking. They're just ambling. They're relatively in line. Okay, but they're not marching. They're not heel to heel. They're not like you would normally march. Okay. I served in the military. I served 4 years in the military. I know what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to marching, okay? And a lot of other people have said it. So let me give you something that somebody said. This is on Blue Sky, and it's from Irby, IRBY, okay? Former Army here. It takes about a week of drill and basic to learn how to march, and that does, okay? Once you do, it's ingrained in you for life. Absolutely. I still know how to do it. You know how to self-correct if you fall out of step. If you're walking along and you're marching, okay, and for whatever reason you get out of step, and the other, let's say there's 4 of you total, okay, and there's 3 of you abreast here, and they're walking, and you're walking with them, and you're in step, and then you don't pay attention or something, somehow you get out of step, okay, it's instinctual. All I gotta do is look and go, oh, I gotta do this, boom, I'm done. It literally takes that long. Fix it, okay, and I haven't been in the military for 43 years. And I still know how to do it to this day. Okay, that's how ingrained it is in you. You know how to self-correct, and if you fall out of step, and if there isn't a commanding officer leading the march, they say there's a designated point person within the ranks to call out a left, right, left if they notice that the order is becoming wrong. Okay, so that clusterfuck of a parade leaves me with only one conclusion. They're saying this was a silent protest, a Foxtrot Delta Tango, if you will. Think about that. You'll understand what that means. Okay. I watched that and I was like, how the fuck is that a march? That's just a bunch of people walking. And again, I'm not super gung-ho on the military or whatever, but come on. And I guarantee you that every single soldier in there knows how to do it. There wasn't nobody that was there like in Ben Basic 2 days. Okay, they all know how to do it. They didn't give a fuck. And nobody made them give a fuck. And the other thing is, my favorite picture, and I'm going to leave you almost with this. I have one more thing after this. My favorite picture is of, hold on just a second here. Let me switch something. I'm going to add a source here. Let's see, image. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, Scooby-Dee. Okay, so my favorite picture is of Trump. They're marching along, okay? He's sitting there. There's like Marco Rubio, and there's other people in there in the stands or whatever, okay? and there's a guy, I don't remember who it is, sitting, not like if it's to Trump's left and then one behind him, that's his spot. And he's looking at Trump like, what the fuck? Because Trump is sitting there with his eyes closed, like he's falling asleep. President Spanky Pants didn't give a fuck about that army, the march. He didn't give a fuck about the army. He doesn't give a fuck about the military. He despises the military. All he wanted that parade for was to say, ooh, look how badass I am. I had a parade for my birthday. You know, even though he pretends it's, and the White House pretends that it's for, to support the military. Anniversary of the military. Fuck off. Anyway, so, I'm going to flip this up here. And I'm going to cover my ugly mug for a second. Okay? So, as you can see, they are named already. This is Shere Khan and Flower. At the end of this month, Pride Month, there's a few days before Pride actually takes place, I will be getting these two Hanyaks. They're both going to be about 7 weeks or 2 months old when I get them. I put out an ad for it, got some responses, and I chose these two. Two different people, each gave me a different kitten. The one on the right, the Tortie, is Shere Khan. I happen to be watching, I don't remember what video it was. I watch a lot of Disney videos, reaction videos on YouTube, because I love Disney music. And I happened to, when I was looking at the picture of the cat, okay, I also was watching YouTube, because I do like 17 things simultaneously. And the next video up in line was that video clip in the Jungle Book of the 4 vultures singing "We're Your Friends" along with Shere Khan. And I was like, boom, that's got to be their name. Shere Khan, his name, Shere Khan. It's a boy, he's fixed. The other one, Flower, she's not fixed yet. I saw her, and it didn't even take me a second to do anything, but it was an immediate association with Flower from Bambi, the little skunk. He can call me Flower if he wants to. I don't mind. Okay, cute, adorable. I have a cousin that had a pet skunk. Okay, they're adorable anyway. Cute and adorable. And like I said, as soon as I saw that, I was like, yep, I got to call him Flower, whether it's to him or her, and it's to her. So I'm going to get her fixed. She's not fixed yet, but I will get her fixed. But anyway, so I put out a little ad, so to speak. I popped it on my socials and my Facebook and whatever. And, because I live on a fixed income at home, and money's always tight, always. But with the way the timing and the circumstances involved, I could have gotten these later. After I got paid, I don't get paid until the very end of the month. I could have gotten these later, but they might have been gone by then. So I would have had to get them first and then all the other stuff. But so I put it out. I put a little wish list from Amazon out. Okay, and so the people who contributed to that, I adore them. I appreciate them 100%. Nobody had to do anything. If you didn't want to do it, you didn't have to do it. But they got me a litter box, a bag of litter, a big bag of litter, a box of canned cat food, like what I saw there. It's canned kitten food, excuse me. Okay, a litter pad, and a laser pointer toy. And then somebody said, well, maybe I shouldn't try the laser pointer toy as much because they might get frustrated because they don't catch it and it stresses them out a little bit. And I understand that point. So I also got a couple like little feather toys, that hang on a string, whatever, almost like a fishing line type thing. I'm sure they'll enjoy it. And because they're 2 weeks old, or excuse me, 2 weeks, because they're 2 months old, there'll be a little chaotic in my house, for a little while. But I'm sure they'll settle down. They're still going to be kittens. They're still going to run around like crazy. The last pair of cats I had, when I had a pair of cats, was about 22, 23 years ago. And it was a pair of sisters. And when they're small, but when they would run through the house playing, it sounded like a herd of elephants running through. So, anyway, let me pop that off. If y'all pop in and see the show, give me your thoughts on what I said. Give me your thoughts about Trump. Give me your thoughts about the protests. Give me your thoughts about Trump's little birthday parade, the assassinations, the assholes in ICE, whatever you want to holler at me about, just holler in the comment section below. Excuse me. Next weekend is probably going to be something, I don't want to say completely non-political, but I'm going to get off politics a little bit because I have an idea in mind for that particular show. So, like I said, if you want to stop later, you can do all the YouTube bullshit, of giving me a like, a comment, a subscribe, hit the notification bell, share, all that good YouTube crap. So I appreciate it. I appreciate anybody who pops in and watches the show. I hope you all have a great week.